Welcome to the Shadow Archives, a fan-led show dedicated to the Blade of Shadows. I'm your host, Matt from Ohio, and today I'm joined by four of my friends from around the world. Sam from England, Louise from Denmark, Patrick from North Carolina, and Lisa from Virginia. Now, if you all recall, last time we left off our story with Salvatore coming home from war and unceremoniously massacring Helena and her two dudes when he catches them in a very graphic three-way. And I guess with that, the archives are officially opened. And Louise, would you like to pick up where we left off last time?
The following part is where we follow Lazarus coming home to Amara and his mother. And as always, we have these nice descriptions of this. And I don't think I'll say much more than that because what is the most important part is the conversation he's having with his mother when he arrives at home. And Lazarus is not very happy after finding out that his father was not who he thought he was. So he goes to ask his mother, why did you lie to me? Who is my father? And they end up fighting about this. So now I'd like to talk to you guys about this because I kept wondering, why is this so important to him? Why is it so important who his father is when his mother tells him, your father loved you? Why is there something more important than this? And also, I would like to know, why do you think that now we see this angry side of Lazarus when until now it's mostly been Salvatore who is this broody, angry, I hate the world kind of guy?
If I could add on to the question, I think at some point in the argument with his mother, he even mentions, like, I knew what you were doing the entire time I was growing up. So to Louise's point, why now? Why is he so upset now? I don't know. Good question. I also wrote down the same question. Does anybody have an answer or a theory?
I
I think oh, go ahead.
no, you go ahead.
I just think he's a human, and his whole life, he's been told this thing about his father. He knew his mother had worked at her job that she did. He was probably relieved that it wasn't, one of those people. Um, and then it's a shock to find out that what you thought your whole life and, you know, uh, could very well be that it ended up that it was one of those randos. Um, that's, he probably, because he didn't have a father, he at least had that honor and idea of his father, and that he tried to say, like, I want to be like him, and I want to, and he was always a very good, son and husband and friend, and always. And I think he maybe got that from, like, my father was a good man, I want to be a good man, and boom, it all just was gone.
No, I actually thought it might have something to do with now the war coming to an end, and for a bit, this war and being in the war was his identity. So I was like, okay, maybe now he feels like, oh, I just got told something, and now I don't know who I am at all. And I thought he was a little confused, and from being in this war that just took up all of his hours and the no space for him to be thinking about other stuff, then it's like, oh, great. I thought I was going home to my family, and now I don't really know what's what.
Yeah, I think
It's traumatizing.
everybody has a curiosity of who they are, um, away from their away from their parents' identities. if you know who your parents are, then you sort of grow up to be similar to them or sort of like them, or the polar opposite. You try and not be that person, and thinking that you've had this person in your life the whole of your life, and then it's been an absolute lie the whole time. I think that's crushing. If it was me, I'd be crushed that the person I thought was my dad is no longer there. And then it would just, for me, it would open up all the kind of questions like who, why did you lie? I think his arguments are justified as to why he's upset.
Completely agree with that, because like you were saying, the aspect of him being a war hero, I'm going to war, I'm going to follow in the footsteps, and now all of a sudden, what are you talking about? He was never in the military. You're crazy.
And to be told by somebody else too.
Yeah. It's just like, and then of course, well, mom lied to me. Mom's not supposed to lie to me, even though she was in that particular, profession. Yeah, it's just, that would be very hard for me. That, yeah, very
I
hard.
love how everybody is just skirting around the
Well, I
actual
don't know
word.
if we wanted to reveal that, or I mean, I guess.
What was it?
No,
What was
keep
the
going,
phrase that
Patrick.
he used? Money left on the table or something?
Yeah, money left on the
Money
table.
left
Yeah.
on the side.
Men coming in and out, money
I
left
didn't.
on the table.
I didn't
Okay.
mean my giggle to interrupt you, Patrick. I'm sorry.
No, it's just kind of funny how we're trying to keep it somewhat civil. But one of the things that really we talked last time about how good she is, Sara is with the descriptions, and whether or not we see it from the character's eyes or do we see it from somebody from overhead. When I was first read this part with him coming back and him looking out, down at the house and the wheat and all that other stuff, did anybody else get the images of Gladiator?
Yes.
When Russell Crowe character was like going to Elysium and he was just like walking through. I mean, as she was writing that, I was like, yeah, that's Russell Crowe going to Elysium.
It's also so
with,
graphic. Like I think out of all the books, in my opinion, this is the most detailed in description of every single step. So in depth, like to the point that you could literally close your eyes and see exactly what you just said, like the vision of him going home in his body. But also, like if it was if there was like a camera and it panned out, you could see everything that he was talking about and everything that he was feeling going into that. But the writing in this is just insane for description.
100%. I think I agree with all of you why Lazarus is upset. I think the only thing I could potentially add on to it is, given what we know from the rest of the book, Lazarus grew up poor. He grew up without a father, and his mother was a sorry, everybody, prostitute. And we learn later on that it seemingly is that everybody knew she was a prostitute. And you can only imagine that, especially in ancient times, he would have been like an outcast in society as a child. So to have an honorable father and a war hero father, that's like the only thing he could claim to be an okay person in society. And to have that ripped away from him and to maybe get the realization that everybody always knew that that was not who his father was everybody laughing at him his entire childhood? Was he,
But do you think,
did everybody think he was a liar and a poser or whatever? I don't know. That's got to hurt hard as an adult.
do you think that's why his mum did it though? Do you think that's why his mum told him the farce of your dad was his war hero, so he didn't have, like, people might have been doing it behind his back, but he wouldn't have had that.
She definitely did it to comfort him and give him some
wouldn't have
kind
had
of
that.
hope.
Like, it's basically like a cover, a shell to hide him from the truth, so that he's not brought up into this world of being like, you're trash. you know, you haven't
I'm not a mother,
got a father
but
and stuff.
it seems to me that there's an internal like mandate for mothers to protect their children. And I think this is probably
100%.
yeah. I think all
And
mothers
she
lie to all of their children in some way, shape, or form to give them the best upbringing that they can. Maybe not out of malice, out of love.
It's
she
also a
probably
way to give him a better role model, so he can see there's more to life than just the bad things that's happening that we're not talking about, and you know they're there, but you don't really quite understand it as a child.
I mean, I'm pretty sure if my dad was a Shadow Lord, I wouldn't want my mom to tell me that's who he was anyway. Like, oh, you know, because the one thing that I kind of highlighted was that she's told him, because why can't you tell me the truth? I only wanted you to believe you came from something good. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
obviously there's nothing good about Severen. I mean, not that I've seen anyway. So, yeah.
Apparently there was something good about Severen once upon a time. Sarah might have told me that Severen was a good dude once upon a time, and then something, which I don't know what that something is, something happened that made him go bad, just like Balthazar, just like Salvatore. But Severin sure ain't good now.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay. That must be where the spinoff's headed.
Nope. I know where the spinoff is headed, and that's not where it is. But I do think we're going to get a Severn book. I do think we're going to get a Severn book at some point, though.
Good.
With the argument, I really empathized with his mother and how she couldn't face the past. Like, I know it's centered on Lazarus, and we're really supposed to be in Lazarus's anger, but I really empathized with his mother not being able to talk about such a traumatic life and not wanting to relive it. Oof, rough.
Yeah, because at this point it almost looks like she's past that life. She's living with Amara and Lazarus. Who knows? I mean, she's obviously not working anymore. So yeah, I can definitely see where the empathy is there, because that would be very hard to admit, especially after all this time.
yeah.
There's also no way that anything good's gonna come out of this conversation, so why should she be interested in opening that door? Totally understand she just wants to go forward, and she just wants them to be happy.
Yeah.
For sure, for sure. Anything else noticeable in this homecoming?
The fact that Amara was still trying to redirect the whole time. I mean, good Amara, just trying to, nope, come back over here, focus on me,
I feel real bad that Tam, her schedule hasn't aligned, given that Amara's her favorite character. Because we're about to be Amara-less for a hot minute after today.
Yeah. So
Amara is such a peacekeeper, though. She's Meemaw. She's the Meemaw grandma and Timeborn. She was that as a young lady too. She's just so sweet.
Yeah.
She was a fixer, that's for sure. But I got some questions about. I really hope Tam can get on here, because I really got some really deep questions about Amara, and I want to make sure she's part of that. So.
Yeah. And if she's not a part of Timeborn, I'm going to make sure she's a part of Timeborn. We need some Tam and Amara thoughts. I think
even some of these.
Oh yes, especially in this book. Yeah. I think before we move on, I think the only thing that I also had highlighted that I don't think there's a discussion here, but I thought it was a really weird choice of words. Is when he's coming home, he describes the cottage as small, familiar, and heartbreakingly unchanged.
Well, he
And
was heartbreakingly unchanged because that meant that, I mean, he always lived in a cottage that was pretty much almost a hovel. I mean, you know, like it was the bare bones.
that's a really good
So,
point.
after coming back from being a war hero, you're like coming back to the bare bones of, you know, when you're a war hero, you expect to come back to a palace or something, you know, and that's what your life is. And
I guess I was over here thinking that like their like nostalgia would have taken over while he was away at war, and he would have come home and be like, "Oh my God, I'm home," but heartbreakingly unchanged. It's so sad.
But
He
do you
just
think it's
want them
because
to do better.
Sam,
I was going to say, do you think it's because his view on what his home was like before, and now finding out that his dad wasn't who he is and his mum has lied to him, do you think that's why it's described as heartbreakingly unchanged, because his view on that home situation has changed?
that's a good point too. Yeah.
I like
It's an
that.
interesting thought. Yeah.
Well, now that Lazarus is home and his mom is all upset, Salvatore has got to come back into the picture. So, Patrick, would
Yep.
you like to take
Okay.
where it goes from here?
So I pick up where Salvatore comes in on horseback like a bat out of hell. And we go through his explanation as to what happened between him and his dad. And then they decide to go to the beach for a party, a welcome home party by themselves, and wake up the next morning. And that's pretty much what I got for my section. But some of the things, so I went through it again and really kind of dove into it.
I thought it was really a nice scene because it was the three of them again, you know, like when they were little.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I went back to the vivid descriptions. You know, just like when I saw the gladiator scene with Russell Crowe going home, the dust lifted off the path in a golden haze.
Mhm.
When Salvatore was running through, I mean, it's like you can literally look through Lazarus's eyes to see the dust plume, to see the figure coming out of the dust. Even before he even saw it, he knew who it was. And the fact that she even put in there the fact that um, normal people wouldn't ride that hard this early in the morning. You know, it's like, so obviously this is something bad. Something's about ready to
Yeah.
go down. Um, and then yeah, just all the descriptions there were pretty good were pretty awesome. And then when Salvatore basically said, you know, you know, don't talk, you know, I gotta tell you what's going on. And how he would basically said, I'm ruined, you know, my dad cut me off, and stuff. The question I had that was here was were there any differences in your thought or feelings of Salvatore's appearance that she gave him between the first time you read this and then read it this time, knowing Salvatore's admission later on in the book? Because we've all read the book already once before, but as you come in and you're seeing this, you know, was there any kind of a different thought on why he looked the way, how vivid his description was? Does that make sense? Does that question make sense?
Fixated on the golden haze. This is not Salvatore, but it's his coming in, because we never get that kind of description again. And it's almost like the golden age is coming to an end with his arrival into this scene. And I also fixated on, they describe him as wearing clothes in tatters. And I'm like, why are they in tatters? I didn't pick up on that one the first time around.
You just got whooped.
But I don't think that actually gets to the heart of what Patrick was asking.
Yeah, I guess so. Like the first time I read it, you know, I just got, you know, so he got his butt handed to him. He just left Helena and the dudes. And now, because I know later on that he actually admits to Salvatore that, yep, I killed him, 100%. Now it's like, well, that makes sense as to why he looked the way he did and the way he was riding, almost like he was riding, riding the horse as hard as he did, because she talked about how the horse was, just breathing so heavy and foaming at the mouth and stuff like that. It was like almost to death anyway. Like, he knew he had made a bad decision with Helena and the dudes. I can't remember their names. And he was like riding because he was trying to get away from that decision, and ended up with Lazarus, because that's the only place he knows is the safe place,
That's what I was going to say. He was riding to his safe space.
And this also fits. We have a line saying it was like he was being chased by something unseen, his own guilt or whatever it is at this point.
Yeah.
I will say, I think the first time I read this book, I think even some of my like beta feedback for Sara, I was like, sometimes it feels like you're beating a dead horse with your descriptions. But reading it the second time, it's like she's trying to tell us about who these people have always been. And it's not that we're just meeting them now that they're 21. It's Salvatore has been chased by something unseen his entire life, and that is his character, rather than the author being heavy-handed in this moment. And so now that I'm reading it a second time, I almost feel a little bad about some of the beta feedback I gave her the first time. Like, I was a little bit ignorant and
Yeah. No, yeah. And the despair that he had, I kind of felt like when he said, my father disowned me, forbade me from using his name, from claiming his blood, it's almost like there's despair, like, oh, I'm now done, but almost like a little bit of disbelief. Like, he's been telling me I'm a loser my entire life. Why is it now that I'm now cut off? Like, I mean, what's the difference? I've been doing this my entire life. You've been treating me this way the entire life. So what makes this one that much worse that you've now cut me off?
Because there are shadows whispering in his father's ears now, and he needs to be cut off in order to move on to the next step.
I asked a question, so we all know what being disowned really implies today with technology and bank accounts and like property, real estate inheritance laws and all of that. But like, what did being disowned really entail back in the day? Like, he'd just been at war the entire time. So like, it's not like he was receiving an allowance or it's just a weird thing to try to wrap your head around 3,000 years difference with this one verb.
Well, I think back then, the name was everything. Your name was, I mean, your hair, your lineage, your everything. I think with him finally getting cut off to his namesake was just like, well, now I truly am a nobody. You've told me I'm a nobody this whole time, but I've still had the name. Now you've even taken that. So now, yeah, who am I?
No, you actually have nothing then.
Pretty interesting, though, that you would have to assume that information has to get around. Otherwise, you're not going to be treated any differently. And given that Lord Lorien seems to be offed, probably right about now.
Right.
He didn't really tell anybody. So I don't know. It's crazy. But yeah, I mean, I know it hurts Salvatore in here. Everything hurts that dude in here.
Yeah. Something else I kind of caught, and I know I'm kind of focused on before I even get to the beach part, but there was a lot that I was trying to pick up on. A little bit later when Lazarus is talking, don't worry, Salvatore. But then he said that the words came out before I could stop them, too fast, too eager, as if I could will them true. To me, when I was reading that, it was like almost like Lazarus is almost to the point like, okay, here we go again. Nothing's changing. He's not going to change. Now he's going to be a leech, even more so than he was. So it's almost, for me, it was almost a statement that he's saying that because he was trying to will it to actually come true, that he doesn't think it's going to come true. Almost like a foreshadowing of, oh, this is one of the turning points. This is the one linchpin that starts to sink in, to start to separate, Lazarus and Salvatore. So
I actually made a note to the same section, but I wrote, it's me again with my Bible here. So I was like, oh, together, brother, this is like Jesus and Judas. So this is not going to end very well. And he was mentioning the money, and I keep having these Bible references. They keep popping up.
That's interesting.
that is interesting. But yeah, no. This is something that I read today, because I was kind of going back over my notes today. Does everybody remember when they stepped in, Lazarus and Salvatore stepped in, and Amara was standing by the fire, and she had the knife in her hand, and she turned, and somehow or some why, not sure why, but Sara put in there, knife still in her hand, the edge glinting in the lamplight. I mean, why would she put in the fact that she's holding a very sharp knife when she turned to look at both of them? And then just a couple later, like, he flinched. Yeah, and he flinched when she tried to come to him to try and take care of his wounds. He always came to Amara when he was wounded. So why would he flinch all of a sudden, except for the fact that she had a knife in her hand?
Because he's completely obliterated, and his senses are on high alert, and he feels like everybody has abandoned him and left him, and Amara and Lazarus are it. That's it. So he's very sensitive now, and maybe just has to worried that maybe they'll turn on him too, or that's going through his brain. I don't know.
Well, I didn't even think about that.
I remember the very first time I read this book. I don't feel this way now, so I'm curious what you guys think. But the first time I read this, so in the chapters preceding this one, you get various things from Salvatore about how he wishes Amara could have been his, or he'll never know what that feels like, or the sentiments that Salvatore says.
Yeah.
And so I thought this was the first time I read this, I thought this was foreshadowing to Amara being the thing that severs, like a knife, Lazarus and Salvatore's relationship. But like, after reading the entire book, I don't know if I necessarily feel that way anymore.
Definitely one of the things.
The fact that she just, out of all the descriptions, I didn't think she would put in a sharp knife glinting in lamplight in Amara's hands as she turns, away from the fire. But yeah,
I'm sorry, you go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Yeah. Well, I actually thought it was because this time he was like, he knew he actually didn't quite deserve her help. So it was his guilt again. And he was like, he knew it was his own fault this time.
Did you guys notice, I know, Patrick, you're probably going to pivot into the actual beach scene, but did you guys notice that here, I think this is the only time we actually ever get a description of Salvatore's appearance?
Yes.
I think he's got a short beard along his jaw. So he's got a chin strap bro beard.
And hair that's usually pulled back nice, but now it's now it's just all loose.
Yep.
So
and dark blue eyes.
The dark blue eyes. Now shifting towards the beach. They're all headed towards the beach, all of them. And they run into the neighbors. And the neighbors are like, hey, y'all are back. But they only notice that they only talk to Lazarus. They don't talk to Salvatore. And I don't know if that's because they were actually neighbors with Lazarus, or the fact that, like Lisa just said, they already know that Salvatore's quote unquote a loser. but it just reinforces the fact that you're a nobody. I'm just going to talk to Lazarus. But yes, but Lazarus is the one that said, yes, we both were there. Yet again, another chance for Lazarus to say, nope, we were both there. It was both of us.
Lazarus always has his back.
Yeah.
He's a good dude.
He is.
No, as you're saying this,
Salvatore. Yeah, sorry, you go ahead, Matt.
no, you're saying on topic. I was going to pivot ever so slightly. You go first.
Okay, then I just quit. I just think I don't think Salvatore is that likable when you meet him. So I don't think they're very. He's not very easy to just go and talk to. It doesn't seem that way.
Exactly, and that actually, I remember finishing the books, and I'm sure Sarah asked each of you the same question when we all finished the book. Like, I don't remember how she phrased it, but it was like, "Are you Team Lazarus or are you Team Salvatore? Like, who's the good guy? Can you tell me who the good guy is?" And I was like, "That's a dumb question. Lazarus is the good guy."
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
But yeah, I have a soft spot for Salvatore, but he really is just a self-centered bastard. I mean, he really is.
But I put it very similar in the same respect of people's views on Balthazar later on in the books. Like, everybody's like, no, he's a bad guy, no, he's a bad guy, no, he's a bad guy. And then it gets to book 4 and you're like, oh, but is he? It's the same with these two. You're like, no, he's the bad one, he's the bad one. And it's like, oh, but is he?
I mean, yeah. They're both bad. I mean, Lazarus, it's not like Lazarus is a saint, but I think, you get his backstory and he's doing all of these bad things out of good intentions. And Salvatore does all of these bad things out of horrible, self-interested, narcissistic, evil intentions.
Yeah, 100%.
And Balthazar is just, especially with Balthazar, you got to take into account the fact that he's missing all of his memories.
Yeah.
And I think that really puts a big cog into the is he good or bad.
Yeah.
But then he is put through the ringer later down the line.
Yeah.
So now they go to the beach and they're having fun. They're frolicking in the ocean.
Age of Aquarius just started playing through my head for some reason.
I had the same thing.
As it should, split splashing through the water. Almost like, they were kids again, just the three of them, and then the memories of fighting, we're done, we're eating, we're done eating. Our bellies are full. We're drinking the wine. Hey, you remember that time we were fighting those 10 dudes? It's like, you remember the war wasn't so bad. We fought off 10 guys, we did some things. And then Amara was like, yep, you fought, I healed you. You fought again. It was a cycle of life, you guys will never learn. And then they go into the three of them basically saying that we're all gonna stay together. Nothing's gonna set us apart. And I mean, really, the beach scene is really. Didn't really get much out of the fact that it was just like a good reminiscing. It's normal. They were trying to feel some peace, and then Sarah closes it like just a couple on that last page. Is our hands met above the fire and shadows merged into one.
Yes.
And I'm like,
oh, the calm before the storm.
Is whose shadows are they? Whose shadow was the one that just finally decided to show up and merge into one, and because, mercy was but a lie the gods told before they took everything back, so it's like that to me, that looks like screamed like, get ready,
Yeah.
It's
I also read that as Amara is in this.
Oh, yeah.
So then when you go to the Dreadhold and she's not there, I read it like the entire time in the first read through. I was like, when's she coming back? When's Amara coming back? She's one of the, like, really good foreshadowing.
Yeah, very much so.
Pun. Speaking of foreshadowing, I think when they're reminiscing, when they're nostalgic, there's a line in there that says, we learned early that if the world wanted to knock us down, we'd rise together.
Yeah.
And Lazarus and Salvatore rise as Shadow Lords together. It's good foreshadowing. Crazy.
That's where she got the title of the book. Yeah. Okay.
Little thing like a title. What?
Yeah. Throw that title drop right there. But yeah, that's, I mean, I really enjoyed this. This whole chapter was really set the stage for sure, of what's getting ready to happen. Not only seeing the part from Lazarus, and what he was dealing with at the time, but then Salvatore's, coming in after what happened with him. And then all of a sudden they just kind of like slammed together in that last page. It was like, okay, here we go.
Yeah.
Buckle up.
It was pretty crazy. Sam, do you want to help us continue the story from the time they wake up on the beach until the time they're in the wagon on the way to the Dreadhold?
Basically, I've read it as it's opened with quite quite a sense of fragility and peace, where they're all waking up on the beach from the night before, and then Salvatore, Lazarus is focusing on the regret about having an argument with his mum the night before, and I think his aim for that, the end of the chapter, would be to apologize and make things better. But after discovering that his mother is in the house, Lazarus' hopes of resolving the fight and giving the apology is shattered, as that is the last memory of her. But before he can start grieving, the soldiers storm in and the situation escalates rapidly as Salvatore and Lazarus are accused of multiple murders, including Lazarus's mother, Salvatore's dad, and his late brother's wife and her two lovers. Which, great. Amara tries to protect them and protests, saying that they weren't there, but then they're overpowered. And then after that, they then get put on a wagon and on the journey to the Dreadhold. There's a tension being built between the two friends where Lazarus questions Salvatore directly about the murders and whether he was involved in them. And Salvatore swears that he didn't kill his father, but does stay silent about the others, which starts to arouse suspicion for Salvatore in Lazarus's mind. And then, where is it? Sorry. Lazarus starts to spiral internally about why things are happening. Was it deliberate? Blah, 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 blah. And then the chapter ends with the pair arriving at the Dreadhold. And yeah, that's basically the chapter.
100%.
So I had a couple of questions about the chapter. Do you think this is where the bond starts to break between the pair? Do you think Salvatore is hiding something more in his silence? And do you think the silence is more impactful than if he lied? Because I think if he had lied, it wouldn't have felt so, it wouldn't have hit Lazarus so hard. And then Do you feel that Lazarus' thoughts shape our sympathy for him?
Questions, good questions. Let's
That
start
is a
with
good question.
let's even just start with the notion of Salvatore staying silent instead of lying, because it's interesting to me because yes, he stays silent when Lazarus asks him directly, but when they're being arrested, Salvatore is like very loud about his complete innocence.
He's vehement, yeah, for sure.
And so like I don't want to say he's lying to Lazarus, but like he's lying, so he like puts it out there. So like does that going to Sam's question, is that the thing that really shatters stuff when he then later remains silent?
Well, I see it as he doesn't want to lie directly to Lazarus because that's his friend. But when he's talking to the guards or jailers or whatever that are taking them away, he lies his ass off. I mean,
Yeah,
I read it as very much like if he's got one person in his life that trusts him and he tells that person a lie, there's no coming back from it. Whereas if he stays silent, then he hasn't lied to the person. So maybe there's ways of coming back if it ever separated them.
Do you think it's almost like he can't lie to Lazarus?
That's what I was kind of getting at. What I kind of thought was the fact that he can't. Number one, he can't lie to Lazarus because of who Lazarus has always been to him, and how he feels about him. But also, what I kind of see is the fact that because Lazarus knows Salvatore so well, even if he were to lie to him, Lazarus would be like, "Yeah, right, okay, whatever, you're lying," because he would be able to know.
He knows they both know the truth.
Yeah.
I actually agree. I read it like the not saying anything was for respect for Lazarus, and yeah, it was a way of not saying anything but not lying. And maybe he doesn't want to admit it. Like we also saw earlier, that there are these little signs, but it's not being said out loud. So maybe he also has some kind of inner war about this. Maybe he's not even. I'm not even sure if he realizes it himself, but I think there's something.
That's good stuff. That's a good question, though. I like that one.
Me too.
Yeah, me too.
Can we take a step back real quick? I don't know if we have much evidence, but like spoiler alert. I mean, the entire podcast is spoiler alert, but Salvatore eventually admits at the end of the book that he killed Lazarus's mom, right? So he just did it. How did he do it? Do we have any theories?
Freaking forgot about that. You just
Sorry.
When I read that, the first time, I kind of figured that they did it, or that he was able to do it while they were at the beach.
Is
That
Salvatore like feigning his
back.
hangover? He did not get as drunk as everybody?
He went back while they were sleeping.
Yeah, while they were sleeping. Yeah, sleeping. Right, exactly. Because because Lazarus had everything, and he wakes up from a drunken stupor, sees them together. I was like, well, this isn't going to happen, whatever. I mean, I don't know about all of that, but that's the only time when I pictured my hand. Well, how did it happen when he admitted it? The only time that I could think of was the fact that somewhere between the time of them being drunk and passing out on the beach and then waking up the next morning, that would be the only time that would allow that to happen.
I 100% never considered that he didn't drink as much as the other two, because if he drank as much as Amara and Lazarus, who like passed out, how was he making the trek back to the cottage? And I don't know, but if he didn't drink as much, that's just, what a jerk.
He is a complete and
Narcissistic,
utter.
selfish. What all did you say, Matt? You just littered it out there for everybody.
I don't know. We'll have to listen back. Sam, you asked a second question. What was your second question? Or maybe you even asked two other questions.
Do you think this is where the bond starts to break because of the deception? Because I feel that in the wagon on the way to the Dreadhold, that if Salvatore's asking, if Lazarus is asking Salvatore all these questions, and he's like not saying anything, I feel that that's probably hinting at the start of where he's like, well, if he's my brother, and we're meant to be this bonded unit, and he can't tell me yes or no that he has or hasn't killed, these people, whether that's where questions start floating in Lazarus's mind about, well, who is this person that I've known for like, a very large chunk of time.
I think
That they can't.
Lazarus.
I was just going to say that they can't say anything to it.
Yeah. I think Lazarus has always been pretty clear who Salvatore is. I think he's always had a soft spot for him because Salvatore had some redeeming qualities, because he always did stick up for Lazarus. He was there for him when he didn't have a father and somebody to stick up for him. So I think he gives Salvatore a pass a lot of the time. But this may be one of those things that starts to erode, like, wow, man, you have gone off the rails.
I don't know if this is the moment that fractures their relationship, but if we could use another metaphor, I think this is the
Eroding?
moment. I think this is the moment that the seed of mistrust is planted.
Mm.
And I think it's in their cell here in a couple of days where Salvatore actually admits everything. I think that's where the seed erupts into a big, huge tree and fractures everything. 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was a rough wagon ride, though, man.
Yeah.
Did you have you had another question, right, Sam?
Oh yeah, sorry. Do you feel that the way the writing has been put about Lazarus and his thoughts, do you think that that shapes your sympathy for him? Because I feel like where he's obviously come home, found his mom dead, and then been taken away, and then his friends essentially like not really talking or answering the questions that he wants answered. Do you feel sympathy for him? Because I don't know if I do.
Not yet, I don't.
No.
It's not in that moment. Not during the wagon ride.
Sympathy for
No.
who? Lazarus?
No, like, so, because Lazarus has got all these thoughts going through his head. Because this chapter's written in his perspective, isn't it?
Yes.
Um, does
Right.
it make you feel sympathy for him because of everything that's happened in this chapter? Because I don't,
You know,
I
I think Sarah's writing is such that I feel sympathy for characters in the moment, and then I generally like emotionally move on until another moment. I don't know if that I think it's because of how Sarah writes things and she's so in the moment and she's so descriptive in the moment. So like I felt a lot of sympathy for Lazarus when they discover Lazarus's mother. And I
yeah,
feel a lot of sympathy for Lazarus when they're locked in that cell together and um Salvatore's like, "I'm really sorry about your mom. You know, I lost my dad too." And they just like erupt.
That's
Yeah.
one of the things
I
I
feel
I
sympathy
like.
felt the
there. I don't feel
same.
sympathy in between though. And I don't know if that's a me thing or if that's just a Sarah's writing
Why
style.
aren't we supposed to but what did Lazarus do wrong? Why aren't we feeling I mean, why are we even questioning feeling bad for him
Well,
or him deserving
it's more
fate?
because of the
I would
amount of stuff
assume
that happened. His mum being killed and him coming home to find it, and because the start of that chapter is like, I'm gonna go and make it right. I'm gonna go and apologize for the argument, sort of, that he wanted to try and fix what he he essentially broke. I don't know if he essentially broke it, but like that there was the fight between him and his mum, and then obviously he didn't get the opportunity to apologize or to fix what
Yeah,
was
he didn't get
broken
that
beforehand.
closure.
Yeah.
Like reality finally set in. I mean, everything seemed to be.
Yeah.
I mean, as you were reading, everything was happening so fast, and then in the back of the wagon, bumping along the road, it was finally enough for him to like just kind of focus on his thoughts, and it kind of try and piece it all together. I guess not really sympathy, but I could definitely see where reality kind of hit him, and then with Salvatore not answering the question, it was just like, oh, okay. So now I've got to worry about you too.
Yeah.
Just so as we were talking, I was just wondering, I just got to thinking, um, how Lazarus always had his back and always had this. And it brings me back to the prologue where, Severen was telling Gareth, is that how you said his name? I've got these two. I've been watching them this whole time. I've got people watching, I've got my shadows, that are basically all inside of it. Do you think that he was kind of guiding Lazarus to be Salvatore's quote unquote keeper until finally now let me pull myself back out and now let's just see what happens to break them apart?
He
that's
could
an
have been,
interesting
but I
question.
think that Lazarus felt the way he did about Salvatore. I think he was realistic about Salvatore.
It's
I
an
think he
interesting
would have
question for
gone.
sure because in the prologue we do get a little snippet of Severin's thoughts about how he kind of guided Amara to be a healer and stay on that trajectory of healing. So
Mm-hmm.
why would he not have done the same for Lazarus or Salvatore's, like, I guess, personalities? That's
And
an
then
interesting question, Patrick.
just kind of push him into killing, his dad, killing, Helena, killing the two guys, killing Lazarus's mom, just kind of pushing him that way. As we're just kind of talking about it, it was just like, I wonder if he was guiding that because he was waiting to get them both together at the same time to allow them to choose their path on who's going to not have, where they were going to choose to be Shadow Lords. What were they going to give up? I don't know, just a random thought as we were just chit chat.
No, it is a really good. I'm gonna have to noodle on that one. I don't know if there's an answer to that one.
Well, that's why I was just sitting here looking like,
I guess two things before we move on to the next section of reading. I wanted to You know how we were talking with Tam, that first get together, and Tam brought up that Amara's name means immortal in Sanskrit.
Yeah.
Well, I looked up. We get Lazarus's mother's name in this passage. I'm probably going to butcher this. Anatia, something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it is imbued with a lot of meaning and whatever, and it's a reference to a deity, and so it's supposedly is supposed to mean endless, eternal, or infinite. And it struck me as odd that Amara's name means eternal and his mother's name is pretty close to eternal. Why are both of these women associated with Lazarus this eternal symbolism? Are they eternal to him?
To him, yes. They were both the two women of his life that were the most important to him, that would always be part of him.
And they both die. Crazy sad.
And now it's a fun thought that Salvatore means savior.
Whoa, wait,
That's
it does?
ironic.
Whoa.
That's just ironic. Or something's going to happen that we don't know.
Wait, is that real?
And Lazarus means God has help.
In Spanish, salvar is to save.
Yeah. It's so close to salvation anyway. The name.
I've looked up everybody's names except for Salvatore's. Why did I never look up that dude's name?
Because you didn't want to know.
Yeah. You were afraid to.
I mean, it makes sense with the root being a salve and damn. And I suppose a good segue is Patrick brought up the barley, and this goes back to the beginning of our reading, but then we see the barley like 6 or 7 times in this small chunk of chapters, like 7, 8, and maybe the end of 9. They walk. I think the last time we see it is they walk from the beach back home, and we get more of the barley imagery and references. And so I was like, why did we get told about barley a handful of times in like a chapter and a half? And apparently barley is one of the first crops that like grows and ripens and is harvested in the springtime, and therefore barley very specifically has the symbology associated with it of transitions to new beginnings. And I thought that was really interesting because we're about to transition to the Dreadhold, and the good times are behind us. Which I suppose means that it's time for Lisa to tell us how these boys are initiated.
The wagon shuddered to a halt. Welcome to the Dreadhold. One of the things I highlighted just to get a vision of what they're seeing. The Dreadhold loomed before us, a fortress built into the cliffside, where despair was not a visitor, but a god enthroned. Its walls, black basalt, layered with the pale limestone, loomed like a wound against the sky. Its towers jagged and cruel, even the wind refused to touch it, dragging thin along the plain like a dying breath. So they are at the Dreadhold. The Dreadhold's gates were made of aged green bronze, their surface scarred by men who had tried to claw their way free. Towers rose on either side of the ribs of some colossal carcass. The smell that rolled from within was unbearable. Damp stone, human filth, and rot baked into the air. The sounds came next, not voices, not words, but the remnants of them, bones that were too long, too hollow to belong to the living, chains scraping like broken bones, dragged across stone, screams distant but not imagined, bleeding through the walls. in waves that rose and fell with the wind. Every sound cut through me like iron teeth, and we hadn't even stepped inside.
And do you want to pause there and talk about it?
Yeah.
Crazy. Well, go ahead.
No, this is what, they were just on the beach dancing and frolicking in the waves, and then the death of his mother, and now they're coming here to this, hell on earth, basically. And Lazarus's first words are, "What did we do to deserve this?" And then we have the guards, talking about why they're there, that they're there because Lazarus is accused of killing his mother, and they're there because Salvatore is accused of killing his father and his brother's wife, and the two gentlemen that were accompanying her that night. that were having tea with her that night. So the first thing, and they keep saying this. So they're talking about more about the Dreadhold is this place wasn't meant to contain men. It was meant to consume them. So that gives you an idea of the Dreadhold. I have one of my very favorite quotes is, then they were wondering, well, how the hell do we get out of here? What's going on? How can we get out? The only way out of the Dreadhold is to kill the warden himself, Morgrath Severen. Okay, so we find that out.
Which is the truth, right? It's what happens.
Yeah. And Morgrath Severen, the name itself was a weight, a whisper men feared to speak aloud, the way one spoke of disease or blasphemy. It had been heard first as a child, whispered around the hearth to frighten the bold into obedience. Back then it was only a story, smoke and superstition, told to keep boys from wandering too far from the night. But the stories were a mercy compared to the truth. And then this is my very favorite quote about the Dreadhold. I think the Dreadhold is basically getting personification a lot in her writing. It's not just a place, it's a being in and of itself. The Dreadhold did not return men, it swallowed them. And here it is. Bam. It cured them of hope. It cured them of hope. That is the most dismal thing I've ever heard. Something curing you of hope? I mean, that is the worst of the worst. They are in the worst place possible. What were your impressions of all of that? What are you thinking when you read that?
When I read the description, for whatever reason, and I'm not a big fan of the books or the film, but it made me think of like Lord of the Rings for some reason. Like, the massive I don't even know what you call it. But like it was built into like the side of the cliff, was it?
Oh, are you talking about Moria, or are you talking about the Black Gates of Mordor itself?
Mordor, that's it.
Yeah.
Where like you just keep looking up and there is nothing but but gates and sky and you know, you have no idea what's hiding behind it. The way that it was described was insane. Like you could literally stand and see the gates. But yeah, that's
It's
what
a
sort
really
of
good comparison.
came to my mind was that it's sort of written like that scene.
I couldn't help but make a comparison to, I think this is more horrific, but I couldn't help but make a comparison to the salt mines of Endovir in the Throne of Glass series.
Yeah.
I will say one thing that I noticed on this read through that I don't think stuck with me the first time. This is an underground prison. But when we get the description, it's just like it's built out of the mountain and it's got these towers going up. Like it's not an underground prison. And I'm just like, what is all this above ground shit? What is going on? I thought this was
like the courtyard that they go through, you know.
Yes.
Well, I mean, I
Yeah,
guess the part where they keep the prisoners is underground.
Yeah, so
And,
what's going on in these towers and stuff? Is like
they don't really talk about that. There's the scene where, that I thought was very, important to, Salvatore that, they basically, brought them to the cell and, made them strip. And, Salvatore was self-conscious, but he just said, "You know what? Just look." And
oh
basically,
yeah.
he had all the scars, some as thin as a blade's whisper, others thick and jagged, like the memory of chains, pale ridges across my back, old burns that had never fully faded, a life carved into flesh. They looked and I let them. Let them see what kind of home a Lord's son grew up in. Let them see what wealth didn't hide. I thought that was a pretty important part. It kind of gives you some sympathy for Salvatore because I mean this has been his entire life being abused
Mhm.
emotionally, mentally, and physically. And one of the things that was in this that I hated him for, was when he said that, what Matt brought up when he said, "Sorry about your mom." First of all, knowing what we know at the end, that's just disgusting. "Sorry about your mom, I lost my dad too." But the thing is, when you're somebody who's been abused your whole life physically, mentally, emotionally, and just pounded into the ground and treated like that, I mean, of course, all you think of is yourself. You're in self-preservation mode. So this gives a little twinge of maybe sympathy for Salvatore, but then he goes on and has to ruin it by saying, "Sorry about your mom." And later we know he killed her. And then he says, "I lost my dad too." You know, and then Lazarus loses his shit at that point and is like, "You hated your father. You wanted him dead. You know, what
Mhm.
what the hell are you even talking about right now? How dare you compare my mother with your father?"
Do you guys think there is any comparison? So we're all in agreement? Okay, cool.
Yeah, I don't think I don't even have a way to even justify that. I just no, there's no comparison.
No.
I don't know.
And then oh,
Before you move on, I did there are like we meet two characters briefly before we get into all of this good stuff, which is the main part of the chapter, right? The cell is the main part of the chapter. But they meet the Enforcer and the Sovereign of Flames. I'm sorry, were you going to go there? I'll let you go there.
No, I want you to continue. I was, but I want you to say it. Yeah.
Okay. First of all, how important are these people? Because I don't think we ever encounter them ever again.
No.
No, I think they were just kind of part of the introduction to them,
So here's my follow-up question. Are they even real?
Well, I read the Sovereign of the Flame as the branding, not as a person. Like, even though it was a person, I read it as the brand that they were marked with, rather than an actual person.
I mean, but there is a person doing the branding. So whatever we call him, is he real? That's my real question. Because the Enforcer is described as he emerged from the shadows like something born from them. And the dude who brands them is a man cloaked in ember-colored robes with a face hidden behind a blackened mask. Are these just shadow instantiations?
Shadows, yeah.
Maybe, but I mean, it is somebody because he did brand them. And speaking of the brand, it's described as the mark, the coiled, writhing shape of Lotan, the seven-headed serpent, the symbol of chaos, of destruction, the god of the abyss, brand for the unworthy, brand of death. That's what they've been branded with here in the Dreadhold. And basically, that's what Salvatore's been called his whole life anyway by his father. They're not even worthy of my name.
I know Lotan is he's the precursor. He was the original precursor to the biblical Leviathan. That's sort of where that came from. And so I don't know, Patrick, if you have any thoughts on Leviathan. I know I'm kind of putting you on the spot.
So yeah, you're putting me on the spot on that one. I'd have to go back through. I hadn't really thought about that one.
But I mean, Lisa said it. It's chaos and destruction. But I think it's really interesting because that's all ancient symbolism. And if we use modern day connotation, because we're modern day readers, right? Serpents represent original evil and lies and deceit. And if that's the brand of the Dreadhold, then is the brand meant to say that the prisoners are chaos and destruction, or is the brand meant to represent the Dreadhold, and the Dreadhold is chaos and destruction?
Both. Because as Severen tells them, welcome to your hell. This is where hope dies, where men are stripped of their humanity. And the whole thing with you are nothing now. You belong to me, mine to break, mine to command. And
I
then
had a
when he
question
talks
about
go ahead.
I was just going to say, because I'm reading it on the Kindle, slightly in italics. So whose voice do you read that from?
Give me a page number.
Because there's quite
Isn't that
on my
Severen?
Kindle it's 165.
Yeah.
It doesn't state whose wording it is. It doesn't state it just they didn't fade, they burned, they branded deep into the iron, and then it says, "You are nothing now, you belong to me, mine to break, mine to command." Whose voice do you read that from? Because it's not.
I
Because
thought it was
they talk
Severen.
about Severen, the warden
Yeah.
of the Dreadhold, and then it says, when he finally spoke, his voice was deep and cold, stone breaking under strain. Welcome to your hell. He's the one who's talking to them.
See, I read it
But
as
is he
a I read
talking
it
to it,
as a
or is that
completely.
something that's
Well, no,
Well,
it says
they
he walked away. He walked away, cloak dragging behind him like a shadow trying to keep up.
is
He
that the
never
shadows
looked back. He
whispering?
didn't need to. His words state, "They didn't fade, they burned. They branded deep in the iron. You are nothing now. You belong to me,
Okay.
mine to break, mine to command." So I wondered whether I read it as the shadows.
Mm-hmm.
I read it as internal monologue. That's I don't remember whose chapter that is, but one of the dudes. Internal monologue, they're not thinking it, but they're translating what the brand means as an internal thought. So it's like a lot of implication, I think, is how I read it. I don't know if that's right, but that's how I read it. But you said you read it as the shadows. That's also really interesting.
That's
Well,
how
it's
I read
because
it.
it just said, it says the cloak dragged behind him like a shadow trying to keep up, almost as if they wanted to stay behind and make sure that they knew that that's who they belong to now, that's who the boys belong to. You know what I mean? Does that make sense?
Yeah,
That makes sense.
that's how I read it.
Like, is it
I
like
read
it's
it like
almost a separate entity that Severin's gone off, but the shadows have stayed and have sort of put in their mind, "No, this is where you belong. You're nothing to us." Blah blah blah. That's how I read it. I didn't know if anybody else had read it in that.
was still Severen, but you have a good point there.
yeah, I kind of read it because he was already gone. Like you said, he turned around and was walking away, but yet here in the back of their minds, it's like, I own you.
Yeah,
You
that's
know,
it. Like not like a thought that's seeped in through their ears is like, "You're nothing. I own
He's,
you. Like
maybe
you're
he's
mine."
whispering shadows.
I think the reason I read it as internal monologue is he says like Severin leaves, and it says like his words stayed. And so I thought it was like almost like they were chewing on his words and they started thinking to themselves, "You are nothing now, you belong to me." But there is a lot of imagery with his cloak being like shadows.
I think his shadows are whispering to them too. That's what I think.
Yeah,
If
the
he
shadows.
left,
That's a really good interpretation that I did not have.
yeah.
Sorry, I've got this whole thing about the shadows. I have had since we started reading.
I know
Every
you're
time there's
on
a
Shadow
mention,
Watch, Sam.
it's
Shadow Watch. Shadow Watch 2026.
yeah.
She is. She always catches all the shadows. Any
I just think there's
mention
a
of
lot
shadow.
of there's a lot of meaning from my point of view. There's a lot of meaning behind it because if this is where they rise from and this is where they are created and stuff, there's got to be a lot of the points where it feeds through. From my point of view, anyway, whenever there's something big happens, there's a shadow. Whenever there's something bad happens, there's a mention of a shadow. So I think that whether it's like an ADHD thing, because it's mentioned, my brain's gone, that one, that one, that one, that one. That's
That's
so
good.
the only way I've read it. That was all. I didn't know if anybody else had actually read it that way too, or whether it was
I
just me.
love that. Love that. I love that, Sam.
I do have one
But
question. Just sorry before
oh,
we scooch anywhere. How do the soldiers know that Lazarus's mum's dead before they
Can
get there?
I can only
But that's what
imagine.
they're charged with. That's what Lazarus is charged with, killing his mother.
Yeah, but
Yeah, but how did they
have they
know before
arrived there?
arriving? Who told them?
They arrived
The
there, and
sheriffs?
then they're like, there's no mention of why they've turned up. They've literally burst through the doors and been like,
You're talking about the arrest,
Mhm.
not the arrival at the Dreadhold.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I can only assume this goes back
Probably
to what we talked about last time with how Lord Lorien knew everything, is that there's shadows everywhere whispering and directing the plot.
more shadows, Sam. More shadows.
But it's not on page and we don't see
Yeah.
it. I think it's just in
No, that was only, I don't know whether somebody else had managed to find it somewhere, but yeah, I didn't know
It's in the
if,
shadows.
No, it's not on page. It's not on page.
And the reason I think they know to go is because I think we get later in the story that Severen is the cause of Lord Lorien's death. So
Yeah.
obviously he knew. And like, how did he know how to time Lord Lorien's death? You know, it's just the shadows. He knows everything. Because when Salvatore kills Helena and what did you call them? Her two tea partners.
Her
company.
tea party. Yes.
There were shadows all through that room that you point out, Sam.
Yes.
So I think Severen just
Yeah,
knows.
yeah.
So he knew how to direct the guards. That's what I think.
So it works like a trigger.
Those shadows,
Yeah.
man. And it's
I'm gonna
amazing
get a
because
t-shirt made saying Shadow Watcher.
when I read this the first time, I kept sending notes back to Sara. Like, I love all of the constant references to shadows and this theme for the book, but also then you meet Severen but like we're reading it the second time and there's so many more references to shadows than I caught the first time, even though I was commenting on it to the author.
Yeah.
It's crazy how much it permeates.
Yeah, for sure.
Crazy.
This section basically ends with the whole, Salvatore is saying, sorry about your mom, and then Lazarus
big
going
blow up.
off on him and saying, how could you even kill your brother's wife just because she bruised your pride? What is wrong with you? So Lazarus knows who Salvatore is. He always has. He just, the lengths to where it's going now is now Lazarus is getting to his wit's end. But that's all that my part was. Do y'all have any thoughts on that?
I mean, other than Lazarus saying some very poignant and accurate observational sentences, I think to Sam's earlier question, I think that is the moment that their friendship fractures.
Yes, me too. I think it starts eroding when he's silent, but then when he brings that up, that's it.
But I guess that takes us to the very end of our reading.
Yeah.
Days bleed together as Lazarus and Salvatore are assigned like daily manual labor, and the seemingly endless and grueling monotony kind of culminates into a single truth that like there's no escape from this place. But eventually whispers begin circulating around like the guards and the prisoners that the Shadow Lord trials might be a chance at freedom. And I think it's this rumor that brings Salvatore and Lazarus back together in some type of weird, uneasy alliance that they term as friendship.
Well, I find it interesting that Salvatore is not having any of it at first. Lazarus is the one who says, we need to do this. And then they come together on it. But at first, Salvatore's like, no, we're here. This is our life.
It's once again like some part of him maybe knows he deserved this because he knows what he did.
That's interesting because I read it as more of is that actually the reason why Salvatore did all of this is to force him and Lazarus into a forever relationship of some kind.
Yeah.
I like that.
There are definite overtones later in this book that Salvatore loves Lazarus in more than a friendship kind of way.
Yeah, he wants them to be in that jail cell for the rest of their lives. But Lazarus is like, nope. If there's a chance to get out,
I'm taking it
let's
because
do
I
it.
got a honey out there and she'd be much better than you, bro.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I just don't like you that way.
Yeah. And to that point, eventually a gong is sounded and all of the prisoners are assembled underground so that Severen can tell them about the Shadow Lord trials. And our story comes to a pause as Lazarus and Salvatore and 98 other men volunteer for the trials, which will begin in just moments when we pick our story back up.
I love it. I love that part. I don't love it.
So it's interesting to me. The Shadow Lord trials are interesting to me insofar as I can't tell if this is something that Severen does regularly or not, if he's been holding it in his back pocket as a trump card waiting for Lazarus and Salvatore to show up.
Well, I think these prisoners have been there for a long time. I think he's doing this now that they're there. That's my understanding. Now that they've arrived, let's get this Shadow Lord thing going.
I agree because
yeah.
Go ahead, Louise.
I agree because I think he sees them as the much bigger threat than the others. I think they're just like, oh, you guys are here, great, you're not a threat anyway. So there was no need to be having these trials, I don't know, once a year or whatever, once every 10th year or whatever.
And if you notice, there's only, at least this is what I picked up on, the prisoners all whisper about it and the guards all whisper about it, but none of them really know what they are. Meaning they haven't been there to see or experience or and to that point, there's one old dude that has allegedly been there forever. But my question is that dude, is he real? Because he's described as sitting in the darkest of the shadows ever, as though he was a part of the rock and a part of the shadows or something like that. Crazy.
His eyes were clouded, unfocused, but yet alive in a way that felt wrong. You know,
Sam, what did you think?
I read that. No, go ahead.
Yeah, I thought about that bit too. There was also the bit afterwards where Salvatore had seen him talking to this person, as it were, and it said swallowed in shadow, glowering, his arms hung stiff in the sides, fists clenched and jaw locked tight. So my thought was, this guy's not real. This guy's another version of a shadow, as it were, because they say, or there's when they're talking about the person and they're like, oh, there's someone there who even the guards don't know how long he's been here for, because he's been here for that long that guards have changed and stuff. So nobody actually has any idea how long this guy has been in the Dreadhold for. But yeah, I don't know necessarily whether I believe he's real either.
Yeah, I don't think he is. I don't think he's real. I think he's a plant per se, because he's been there forever. And I think he's just one that feeds just enough information to those who are questioning to say, yep, let's go ahead and do this. Because even the other guards, or not the guards, but the prisoner said, people have tried, but they've all failed. So it's something that they've done over time, but nobody's been strong enough to actually go through it and come out as Shadow Lords because how long has he been the Warden? Obviously, he's been the Warden long enough for all these other Shadow Lords for him to have their tomes. So, was he the original Warden of Dreadhold?
Also, there's the notion in the lines underneath, where they ask, "Has he ever spoken?" And somebody says as if remembering a dream. To some, he said, but not to most. So my question is whether whether he's planted there for them, and maybe there have been people before that have been sort of put through the trials, but that would have been like years before. And whether they've just waited for these two to turn up to start it off again.
Yeah, the Shadow Lord trials are very interesting. And we're definitely going to get into them more next time. But some things I've been wondering about is the Shadow Lord trials, to my understanding, are not a requisite necessity to be able to become a Shadow Lord. And they're more like Severen's sick, twisted game and way to feed his own shadows with other people's misery and suffering. Because all that the shadows
Or
care
souls.
about is if they can accept you and if you can accept them, which I think requires a degree of being broken down. But the way in which you become broken down, I don't think is like you have to go through these 6 specific trials.
I've always reading this book a second time round, it's made me think more about the soul and how to 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 give everything of yourself to gain this like Shadow Lord title. You have to be the most broken, you have to be the most willing to try anything to get uh basically to get what you desire, as it were, whether you know it's a desire or not.
What do you think the difference is? This is something that I've been wondering about. So you have Shadow Lords that expressly want to be Shadow Lords. They volunteer for this, but then you have somebody like Lazarus who doesn't want to be a Shadow Lord. He just wants to get out of the Dreadhold. Do you think that plays any sort of part into ascension or who you are after you've ascended?
I do. If you're more pure of heart, but
Actually, I'd have to agree because you have to give up something. You have to give up the chance of something. But yet Lazarus somehow still retains an inkling of his former self because he keeps bringing back more. There's still something there that it's just under the surface apparently, but I don't know. I it's kind of that's
I think it's based off desire, though. I think if Lazarus' desire is to get back to Amara, then he's always going to have that part of him. But then desire is what is making the others want to be a Shadow Lord. There's got to be something that they desire more, that they're willing to give up, whatever, to gain the title.
Oh, it was just when I was reading it, I thought it was interesting when they were told no one has ever survived. Maybe one of you will be the first. And I'm like, oh, but I'm pretty much rooting for Julia. I just thought it was right.
Yeah, I'm over here just chewing on Samantha's last comment, and I really want to go into who are the other Shadow Lords that we know of, and what did they give up. And I want to go into deep Shadow Lord lore, but I think that is a different episode. But I don't want to discount what Sam said, because that was just too deep for the end of an episode. That was too deep and too thought provoking to end an episode.
I'll try and throw it in further.
I think it's a perfect way to end an episode, because people can noodle on that until next week. And
very Sara-esque.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But given what we learned through the rest of the book, Severen is the warden of the Dreadhold because the constant, never-ending despair of the prisoners feeds his shadows constantly, and he has his whole like sex dungeon room harem thing that is just feeding his shadows. He doesn't need the Shadow Lord trials to feed his shadows. I mean, I'm sure they're all gluttons at this point, but so therefore the Shadow Lord trials are specifically engineered for Salvatore and Lazarus.
For sure.
And so it leads me with one last question. If he actually fears the prophecy that Gareth mentioned in the prologue, why is he even giving these two fools a chance to challenge him with Shadow Lord power?
So he can put them back in their tome.
Oh, look at you with an answer.
So he can immediately be like, okay, I got you, and then slam you in your book and put you on my shelf. There you go.
But I wonder, because obviously if he's feeding off of the... I've always thought he's feeding off of these other people. And there's mention in Wicked Lovers where Balthazar and remind me of his wife's name.
Zara.
Yes. Where they say they have to go and feed. I wonder whether it's not about being scared of these two, but whether feeding off of a Shadow Lord that doesn't necessarily know that they are a Shadow Lord would give them a heightened power, as it were. So if you break them down and...
Well, that's an interesting line of thought. Is the way that Shadow Lords don't feed, but the shadows feed. Is that the same as how the darkness feeds? I think the way I read it, the darkness
put it in the same bracket that...
Yeah, same bracket.
Darkness is shadows. Like, you have to have dark and light to cast a shadow. That's all.
Yep. Bingo.
You have to have dark and light to cast a shadow. And isn't that just the perfect thing to end on?
Yes.
No notes.
Exactly.
Mic drop.
I love it.
In our next episode, the Shadow Lord trials officially begin, and we'll be breaking down what happens during the first 3 tests in chapters 12 through 17 of Rise of the Shadow Lords. But for now, the archives are closed. Thanks for listening. See you guys next week.